And to end with the panel. And a question for them that I posed at the start. If a white man can now identify as an Aborigine, if this rapist, male rapist, can now identify as a woman, then why can't this woman identify as a bird?
My name is Horace, and I'm a red-tailed hawk. In our world, I do have the body of a hawk, but while fronting, I consider myself a Therian, because I am in a human body, but my identity is still a hawk. Not all animal alters will identify this way, and I am, in fact, the only animal alter in our system who does identify this way. I am doing my best to come to terms with living in a human body.
Now that's the question I asked you as well at the top of the show, but let's see now how your answers match the answers of the panel. Joining me is Sky News presenter James Macpherson of The Late Debate here on Sky at 10 p.m. The Sky News contributor Daisy Cousins, also with her own YouTube channel. Daisy, I suspect this woman has some issues. For a start, she claims she has autism, so I don't want to mock her at all. It's more about a movement and the logic here. What is the difference between the examples I gave, Bruce Pascoe claiming is an Aborigine, for instance, and this woman?
Well, look, Andrew, if you're thinking within that school of thought, philosophically, there actually isn't a difference. You'll find on the woke left, possibly a slightly more niche version, but there are plenty of woke leftists out there who will say, yes, of course, this woman can identify as an animal. She can identify as a bird, a dog, whatever she wants. And yes, a man can identify as a woman and a non-Aboriginal as an Aboriginal. It's all this sort of radical kind of identity movement that really has sort of no logical conclusion. But the interesting thing about this young lady is that I think she's part of a larger and more insidious online trend, which is young people on TikTok self-diagnosing with quite serious personality disorders or neurological problems like Tourette's syndrome, and in this case, DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. And you have this whole spectrum of young people claiming they have sort of 30 personalities living in their heads who front at different times. They have different alters. I guess this alter is a hawk. Maybe she's got someone else living in her head who's an old man. I don't know. But either way, this young woman, I think, is in the throes of what is quite possibly a horrible mental health crisis. She's not the only one out there. I've seen thousands of these videos, Andrew, and it is such a dreadful, sad reflection on Generation Z, those under 25, and what they're coping with post-pandemic. And as you say, you know, we shouldn't be mocking this young woman. We should feel very sorry for her and hope that she's getting the help that she so obviously needs.
James Macpherson, but the idea that you can identify as something that you're not is, I think, is a sort of social trend that has suggested this possibility to her. She's just taken it in a different direction.
Yeah, well, young people like these, Andrew, are not a surprise. They're a classic example of what happens to a culture that embraces moral relativism. We've rejected our Christian roots and we've decided there's no God. Well, if there's no God, there's no objective truth. There's only subjective feelings. So if I feel like a woman, I'm a woman. If I feel like a black person, I'm a black person. And if I feel like a bird of prey, I'm a bird of prey. And on what basis are you going to tell me that I'm not? So as a culture, we now have our feet firmly planted in mid-air. It's a kind of cultural-wide madness, and the roots of it go back to a rejection of objective truth. And until we come back to that, we'll continue to see more of this and worse.
Well, I tell you what, I'll need some guarantees before I ever go to her place for dinner, because as far as I can tell, if you identify as a hawk, you must be pretty chasing live mice around the kitchen. I don't know how far she takes this.